Gray, and we're here today for our ongoing Seat at the Table series. I'm just going to give everyone a couple of minutes to get logged in and to get settled. If you're joining us, what we would love for you to do is put your name, affiliation, and maybe your hometown in the chat, just so we have a sense of who's here today. I want to remind everyone that this Seat at the Table is being recorded, so it will be available later. And we also welcome attendees to put comments or questions in the chat. We like to keep this very interactive. So if you have questions, ideas throughout the conversation, we'd love to hear from you. So again, if you're joining us, please feel welcome to put your name and affiliation, hometown in the chat, and we'll get started in just a moment. We have a really special conversation today. Great. Good. Well, I think we'll get started. Again, my name's Lieutenant Governor Molly Gray, and this is our ongoing Seat at the Table series, where every few weeks we bring in Vermonters or communities from across the state to talk about issues that aren't oftentimes getting as much attention as they should. Again, for folks joining us, if you want to put your name and affiliation in the chat and your hometown, we want to know who's here. Please, as the conversation goes on, feel welcome to post a question or a comment. And again, this is being recorded. So today's conversation is really dedicated to Ukrainians in Vermont, and also a conversation about how Vermont can support the people of Ukraine. I'm very, very honored today to have Maria, Masha, and Rustic joining us from Middlebury College. All three are Ukrainians who are students here in Vermont. They represent three of, I believe, a dozen or so Ukrainian students. And it's such an honor to be able to give them the floor, to give them a seat at the table, to give them this platform today to talk about their own experience and to give us a greater understanding of what's happening in Ukraine and how Vermont can not only help support Ukrainians in Vermont right now, but also individuals who are displaced or Ukrainian refugees. Also, just a better understanding of the conflict and how we got to today. Just a bit of framing. It's been nearly 1 month since Russia's unprovoked, unlawful invasion, most recent invasion of Ukraine. This morning, I believe the UN High Commissioner on Refugees announced that more than 10 million Ukrainians are both displaced within Ukraine as internally displaced people, and then also as refugees. I know that there are more than 3 million refugees that have had to leave Ukraine because of the conflict in Poland and surrounding countries. Last week, we as a state passed a bill, and the governor signed a bill that would allocate $640,000 to Save the Children, one organization that's working in and around Ukraine to support resettlement, to support emergency humanitarian assistance, and to support unaccompanied minors. A number of women and children in particular have been most greatly impacted by the conflict. But the work is just beginning, and there's still, despite these feelings of being far away from Ukraine, feeling hopeless or helpless at times, there's still so much we can do. So with that, it's such an honor to have Rustic, Maria, and Masha here today. Rustic, I want to thank you again for coming to the State House and for helping to give this really great idea. And we want to give this floor to you. So Maria, we're going to start with you. I'd love for you to speak for as much time as you like, maybe no more than 7 or so minutes, about your personal experience and what you believe Vermonters, Americans, citizens of the world can do right now to support Ukraine. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maria Jolas, and I'm a sophomore from Ukraine at Middlebury College. My family is currently in Chernivtsi, a city in the west of Ukraine, and my parents were internally displaced there from Kiev for the second time in their life by the Russian aggression. My family and I became internally displaced people for the first time in 2014 when Russia invaded Donbass, the eastern part of Ukraine, right after it annexed Crimea. My grandmother, an 89-year-old woman, a child of the Second World War, is still in Donetsk region, and she has been again waken up to the sound of missiles for the third time in her life, for the second time from Russian missiles. Yesterday, a bomb fell on an apartment next to her yard. 4 days ago, under shelling, at her own risk, my sister, a 30-year-old young mother with her family, left Mariupol, a city where 300,000 people are being trapped with the supplies running out, no power, and no running water, but continuous bombing and shelling. Before she and her husband and a 8-year-old son left, they stayed in her son's school basement for 10 days. When the fire ceases, they would collect snow and cook pasta, because Russia does not let any humanitarian convoys to go through, and it doesn't let individuals who want to break through with food and water to Mariupol. 2 days before she left, a bomb fell next to the school where she and her family took refuge in. It knocked down the windows and it wounded woman's hip. That woman has been lying on the floor and begging for the poison, not to feel pain anymore. There were other people wounded whose parts of the bodies were ripped off in their apartments, and in blood and huge pain, they all came to seek refuge in that school's basement. 4 days ago, she personally, under the sound of a falling bomb next to her yard, put her husband and a son into a car. There were no humanitarian corridor. Herself and other citizens of Mariupol who had private vehicles united into a column to leave the city. After she escaped, she told us that at that point it didn't matter whether she will die from the shelling on her way out or from hunger or injury in Mariupol. However, there was a small chance to survive, and she had to seize it for her 8-year-old son. The next day, another group of people from Mariupol united. Another group of young and old men and women, somebody's sons, daughters, wives, husbands, mothers, and fathers formed exactly the same column, but they didn't make it. Their self-humanitarian convoy was attacked by Russia. My stepsister says that she survived to scream that people of Mariupol need help. She says it's not a city of heroes, it's a city of death and suffering. Her mom and 3 siblings, aged 16, 11, and 9, are still there, and they cannot escape because Russia doesn't allow evacuation buses to reach the city. Instead, Russia is wiping out it from the face of the world. As President Zelensky said in his address to the Congress, Russia has turned the Ukrainian sky into a source of death for thousands of people. Russian troops have already fired nearly 1,000 missiles in Ukraine and countless bombs to kill civilians, because their army faces massive resistance from our brave men and women who are ready to barehandedly stop Russian tanks for their rights and freedom. We appreciate the massive sanctions that are being imposed on Russia, deeply grateful to many nations, including the United States, for sending military and humanitarian aid to help our country. But it's still not enough to counter the massive firepower Ukraine is facing. We need protection from Russian bombs. The country's air defense forces are outmatched. We are calling for surface and air missile systems and no-fly zone. The White House has said that those actions would be seen as military escalation, and the United States doesn't want to draw into the war. Escalation is what Russia is doing, bombing at an exponential rate our cities and wiping out my nations from the face of the world. Without protection of our sky, young women like my sister would not be able to escape humanitarian catastrophe in Mariupol, save her siblings and mom, whose lives are on the brink of death due to the constant bombardment. Our allies will not be able to deliver the defensive weaponry. Our volunteers will not be able to deliver food, blankets, medical supplies, and other essential goods to those who need them. You are all somebody's sons, daughters. Many of you are somebody's husbands, wives, mothers, and fathers. Imagine every morning waking up and going to bed in fear that you are going to lose your loved ones once and for all. Imagine bombs falling right outside your window, destroying your yard. We need to prevent further devastation by supplying air defense missile systems to Ukraine and declaring a no-fly zone over Ukraine. Today, us, Ukrainian students at Middlebury and beyond, doing whatever we can to support, to stop the war. We are raising awareness. We make voices of Ukrainians heard. We are organizing donations and donating to Ukrainian armed forces and humanitarian aid initiatives to save the lives of our loved ones and more generations to come. We do everything we are capable of. And we want to ask you, are you doing everything you can to stop atrocities committed by a bloody dictator? And would you act differently if your streets were covered with dead bodies? If buildings familiar to you were being bombed and destroyed? If your acquaintances were in mass graves or refugee camps? Help us to protect the sky as much as if you would protect yours.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you for really painting a picture and true understanding of what's happening on the ground day to day. I want to be really clear that Russia's invasion of Ukraine is illegal. It's a violation of international law. It's a violation of the United Nations Charter, the charter that Russia helped ratify and create. It's also the attacks on civilians, attacks on women and children and civilian objects, be it a mall or an apartment building. The mall, I believe, was attacked today in Kyiv, or apartment buildings, stores, cathedrals. Those are all violations of the Geneva Conventions, the most ratified treaty in the world. And so I want to say that unequivocally and clearly today. I think it's really, really important that we acknowledge that and the severity of the violations that are happening day in and day out. I next want to invite Masha. Masha, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I am a senior at Middlebury College, and I grew up and I was born in Odessa, Ukraine, a city port that is on the banks of the Black Sea in the south of the country. My family currently, half of them are in Mykolaiv, which is a city near Kherson. Kherson is the only kind of town that was taken over by the Russian military right now and is temporarily occupied. But they have not been able to move further in the south region of the country. As Maria has mentioned, the military forces are not only attacking from the sky, they're coming from all sides of different border that are available for Russians. Right now, and my other half of the family is in Odessa. Odessa and Mykolaiv are 2 hours away from each other, just to give you a perspective of what the region is like. Odessa is preparing for perhaps further escalation of the conflict. They have been successful at rebuking multiple missile attacks and have, I think, successfully sunk a couple of boats. There are a lot of military Russian ships that are currently stationed and can be seen from Odessa port. And currently, of this morning, there was a shelling of the coastal line of the civilian. No military base is near that region of the city. And luckily people hid in the bomb shelters and avoided any civilian casualties for now. And it was also light compared to the other action that Russia is taking in the other part of the country. But I would like to take this moment to speak to you a little bit about the Russian propaganda and the Russian narratives that you should be aware about, and perhaps you might encounter in just different media spheres that maybe are not approved or maybe have leaked into the English-speaking world or different Western media inadvertently. One of the narratives that Russia is really promoting is that they're there to denazify Ukraine, claiming that there is a right-wing movement that is illegitimately occupying the power, which is absolutely not the case. The president of Ukraine is somebody who comes from the Jewish background, so the whole and receives a lot of support actually from Israeli state. So the whole idea just doesn't make sense if you look at it logically, and I just want you to be aware of it. And if you do encounter this narrative, just gently point out different sources and different common facts about the country, and the fact that the power that our president has was absolutely selected democratically and legitimately. I come from Odessa, which is in the south of the country, and it's a Russian-speaking mostly region. One of the narratives that Russia is putting out is that there are Russian-speaking citizens of Ukraine that are being abused by Ukrainian government because they speak Russian and not Ukrainian language. I would like to point out, as somebody whose native language is Russian and who has grown up in Odessa, Ukrainian language is a national language of the country. It is the language that was taught to me and that I speak fluently. And at any point of the different laws that were introduced over the past 20 years that were promoting Ukrainian language, that has experienced dire attack during the Soviet Union and experienced so much repression. Some laws were introduced to just populate it more in the public sphere and promote it among the young people. Those laws absolutely were voted democratically and are supported by the Russian-speaking population of Ukraine. I personally do not know anybody in my family, and my whole family speaks Russian, who would claim to be oppressed by Ukrainian government. So I would just like to clarify that is one of the false narratives that unfortunately sometimes even leaks into the Western media. And I have had a conversation with my Swedish classmate the other day that claimed that Ukraine gave kind of an excuse to Putin to attack with these laws. And I would like to rectify that is absolutely not the case. And Ukrainians have never felt more united about who we are as a nationality, which language we speak, and believe me, there is definitely no time to claim that it's not the language that decides your politics nowadays. It's the bombs and the narratives you support. So please, please, please help promote that narratives. Know that Ukraine has Ukrainian language, has Ukrainian culture. We have attended a beautiful concert in Burlington that was where they played Ukrainian music composed by Ukrainian composers, and there are so much of things you can research about Ukraine that are beyond war that you can also share, and artists you can support. And moving into my final remark about the ways you can support, it is definitely, of course, the priority has to go to the humanitarian organizations like Razum for Ukraine, and perhaps in Vermont, people I know World Kitchen organizations that are now operating in the western part of Ukraine. I have seen their reports on the ground. It is definitely an organization that is doing so much right now. And of course, we have to prioritize that, but if you have a circle of friends and you know that people have different interests and some people are into art, there are bookstores right now in Kyiv that are selling books online, and of course they may not be able to deliver them right now to the US. They have worldwide delivery. They have not been able to deliver it right now to the US, but this can be a guarantee of how much you believe that this war will be over, because they promised that the books will be delivered once there is peace. So if you're willing to invest personally in a peaceful future of Ukraine, I urge you to also make a commercial purchases of the businesses in Ukraine. One of the ways that people have been because some people prefer to really go directly to the people, and one of the ways have been finding Airbnb homes in Kyiv, in the regions that have been attacked, when maybe Mariupol is too late to save Mariupol through Airbnb donations, but there are different regions, and Ukraine is holding on economically, so you can rent a room for a week and just send a nice message to the renters that you're not coming, but the money goes directly to their bank account. That's a creative way. Unfortunately, not all of the people in Ukraine have Airbnbs, especially old and people who are insecure. They still rely on government aid and still rely on humanitarian aid. So be mindful how much you promote that. Know that it's an option, but also seek different ways. And of course, if people have interests in art and music, there are a lot of donations organizing right now and a lot of artists. And finally, to close off, now that I've overwhelmed you with the resources that you have and the ways you can support, and I want you reminded to fight the propaganda narrative that can be circulating online, especially, to support humanitarian aid, as Maria said, to find creative ways of supporting Ukraine, whether it's ordering books online, booking Airbnbs, or finding artists that can make a personal portrait. There are many Kyiv-based artists who are doing that, and you can contact me personally if you need more details. And finally, just not losing apathy, because the war has been been in the news for a month now, and some people have an inclination to turn off, to take a break, which I do recognize. Unfortunately, when you're taking a break, just remember you're taking a break from me. I cannot take a break. This is me. I am the news you're consuming as a Ukrainian. And maybe just channel that despair and that ache you feel in the heart, hopefully, into helping the communities. And of course, if you encounter Ukrainians in Vermont, be mindful how you talk to them. Maybe be mindful of how much you smile. It can trigger us. I know Americans love to smile, and this is my favorite thing about this country. But sometimes when you ask, how are you doing with a smile, it just breaks a heart of somebody who is just holding on. And the ways you can help is perhaps to just say, hey, I just wanted to check in with you. Maybe that is a better way to say, instead of asking, how are you doing? I just wanted to check in with you, and if there is anything I can help, you can offer help, and avoid platitudes, avoid kind of words of support, and avoid explaining how much US is doing. Maybe just stay away from those bigger issues in the personal interaction with Ukrainians, unless they bring it up. And finally, I know I'm aware I'm overstaying my welcome, but I will read two sentences from Ukrainian journalist, now writer, Asya Bazdirova, to kind of also help you resonate with the spring in Ukraine. Mid-March, stray cats are in the middle of their mating season. When I go outside around midnight, I listen to their overlapping laments all around. What a joy to hear them going about their business against all odds. I want this soundscape to prevail, not the one that I hear that starts at 2 a.m. with the first siren of the night. Here we say a bare wire for a conductor left without an insulation. You touch the high voltage one and it hits you hard. I feel like a bare wire these weeks, transmitting all I witness. I am a receiver. The unspeakable comes through me. But as much as I am bare for pain, I am equally bare for love. So this is the artist that is based in Kyiv, and I want to join her to say that I'm equally bare for love that we receive from Vermont and from the different countries around the world that are supporting us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Masha. That was really powerful. I did want to ask if you have links to any bookshops or artists, put them in the chat, and we will reshare. Absolutely. Thank you for that very powerful reading from the journalist at the end. And thank you for speaking so boldly about propaganda. And to the extent there are also Ukrainian journalists, Ukrainian television, newspapers that you believe we can help promote in terms of making sure that Vermonters and the community understands what's happening on the ground every day. We certainly want to do that. It's now my pleasure to introduce Rustic. Rustic came to the Vermont State House, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, I believe it was 2 weeks ago. And Rustic, thank you again for coming to my office. Thank you for being the impetus for today. And the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant Governor. So hi, everyone. My name in Ukrainian would be Rostislav Yarovik. I'm from the west of Ukraine, particularly from a city that has been accepting and has been a sort of a transition point for a lot of internally displaced people and refugees who would want to escape into the EU. The city is called Lviv. I've lived there my entire life, all 18 years of my life. I love it so much, in fact, that I even have a big printed out map of it with all of my memories and with all of my favorite cafes that I marked down. And since the war started about 4 weeks ago-ish, I've just been thinking how I cannot return home. I really wanted to, and I've been looking towards it even when I came, the first day I came to the United States in September of last year, I immediately thought that there's no such coffee and no such chocolate that can compare to my hometown. It's still a taste that probably has been fueling my love for my town, for the people of that town, for my friends and family who are still there. And now knowing that I'm not able to return, in fact, I'm not in any way able to return, just because if I do go, what can happen the next day? With this war, there's so many shellings and there's so many bombings each day, even in my town, that I cannot predict what might happen next. The Russian military and the Russian government has been so unpredictable and has been so cruel in just civilian casualties and bombing. They claim to be bombing and destroying only military infrastructure, but as we see, even yesterday they bombed a mall, a completely civilian building in Kyiv, and in Mariupol that has been besieged for about 2 weeks now. They pretty much destroyed about 90% of the city, and I'm sure that 90% of the city isn't just military infrastructure. Just recently, they bombed a drama theater who was hosting and keeping safe about 1,000 people in its basement. And even at right on the ground where that theater was, with chalk, there was marking that there were children in this theater right now being kept safe. And then the Russian military just decided to bomb it, just decided to erase it from the face of the earth. And sadly, I am not going home this summer. I don't know when I will be able to go home, see my parents and family, see my town, the beautiful Polish, Austrian, Renaissance architecture. Don't know when I will be able to taste that coffee and chocolate again. And sadly, that's something that I have to live with every day. The memories that I made, the friends that I made are all there. All of the associations, all of those vivid memories are still there, and I cannot access them this summer at least. And I don't know when I will be able to. my family is not able to escape. They don't have the money or the means to escape. I myself have been sending them money from what I earn here at Middlebury College from my 20 hours per week. I'm sending them about 1/3 of each paycheck I get just because their savings were spent on getting me here, on paying for my contribution, for my tuition, for my transportation to America. Pretty much everything that they've been saving for their entire life was spent for me to be safe right now, for me to be in this privileged place where I'm not even able to see them. So in my way of getting back is I'm sending them money for food, for essentials, for giving out to people who might need them most, for donating to other people. Like I said, they don't have the means to escape. They don't have a car. They are not able to take a train just because they don't know any other language except Ukrainian and Russian. They don't know Polish. They can't escape into Poland. In fact, they don't even have an international passport, and then don't have the money to do that as well. I am a member of Ukraine Global Scholars Foundation that has helped me get here, helped me apply to American universities around the world. And we have about 200 alumni that are from all over Ukraine, whose families are all over from Ukraine. And each day when I wake up, that's the first thing I do. I go into our chat rooms or just on our news webpage, and I see like what's going on. And it has been really hard with just realizing that every day when I wake up, that's the first thing I do. I check about the war, check about how my friends and acquaintances are doing, how their families are doing. And a lot of these families are on the front lines. They're actively fighting against the Russians, despite not even being officially in the military. They're joining the territorial guard, or even just going out and protesting. And even in the cities that were captured in the south, people are protesting daily against Russians with assault rifles, with pistols. The Ukrainians are coming together and just pushing them out of the cities, just peacefully, not committing any harm. That goes to show how strong and how committed and how determined the Ukrainian peoples are, that they're willing to risk their lives just to be free, and to be free of these occupiers, of these people who are defying every single possible moral law, international law, whatever. What I wanted to say is that, like Masha already said, it's been really, really hard to know what's going on with my family, with my country, with the places and people I love most. But also seeing how peaceful and how truly unfazed, simple, quiet life can be here in Vermont, because I am very privileged and I'm very happy to be here in safety. But I realized that I could have been the one to be there. Just a year and a half ago, I would not have imagined that I would be here in Vermont, in Middlebury, talking to you. Never would I have in my life imagined that. But not knowing that that could have been me in my country, not being able to escape right now just because I don't have the money to. The only thing you can do in this situation is to not stop talking about the war, is to share awareness, spread awareness, and share the resources, everything you can with your friends, family, colleagues at work. And from there on, I believe that there is much to be done. There is much to be donated. There is much to be still resolved. But the first step you can do is talk about it and not stop talking about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Verstik. I can't imagine how hard it is to share today. I want to thank you and Maria and Masha for just being really brave and I'm sure it's all the time. You're thinking about family and thinking about friends and trying to keep the faith and keep the strength. There are a lot of folks tuning in today who've, and I see some questions coming in. Thank you, Sherry, for your question. I wanted to invite anyone who's here to feel welcome to put a question in the chat or raise your virtual hand and we'll call on you. I see like the first question, this is Rustic, one that we talked about, but is there a way that Vermonters can directly support you and other students here in the state? Do you have a GoFundMe? Is there some way that if Vermonters wanted to contribute or show expressions of support, they could do that? And this is a question for Maria and Masha, if Masha's still with us as well.
Yeah, maybe I can go first. I would say help us to stop the war. I think, as just Rostik said, there is nothing we want more than reunite with our families, to walk on streets, destroy streets. But as the war stops, I have no doubt we will rebuild it in a timely manner, build it and make it even better. Help us to stop the war. Sometimes people think that they can't, but you can. You can contact your House representatives and you can ask them to support the initiatives that are for sending air defense missile systems to Ukraine. We are winning on the ground, but our air forces are not matched with Russia. And if we can protect our sky, we will win the war. I have no doubt that we will win the war. The question is about time and human cost, the cost of Ukrainian lives. If we receive more air defense support systems today, the war will end sooner rather than later. You can support Ukrainian armed forces that are defensive and not offensive. I frequently can hear this narrative that people are not willing to support military in the United States. But if Ukraine stops fighting, there will be no longer any Ukraine. If Russia stops fighting, there will be no war. Russia-American business that still continues doing their business in Russia and paying taxes to the government that then comes and kill my people. There is the whole list circulating, and I'm happy to share it here, of companies that are continue doing business in Russia. You can stop buying their goods, and that will help us to end the war sooner rather than later. You can support humanitarian aid that goes to people who are currently in Ukraine, who, like Rostik's parents, like my parents, cannot leave and are staying there, cannot leave for certain reasons, but also are not leaving because they feel that the country needs us and we need to stay. You can help us by helping us to stop the war, and you are capable of doing this.
Yeah, I thank you for that, Maria. And I think the challenge, and just to share some of what I understand is the challenge. I don't want to speak for the president or for Congress. Again, I'm a lieutenant governor, but I do understand that the concern is if the United States engages more than the country currently is in military operations, then it becomes a party to the conflict. I think some people would argue that already the United States may be a party to the conflict. So that is a question at a much higher level around at what point is the United States engaging in a war with Russia directly? And does that escalate the conflict and make things worse? Again, that is far above my pay grade as the Lieutenant Governor of Vermont, but your point is very well taken. And I think that Vermonters wishing to express support for a no-fly zone, for increased military assistance, should absolutely call Senator Leahy, Senator Sanders, Congressman Welch, and we can share their contact information in the chat. These are decisions that are made at the congressional level without question. I also know or heard this morning that President Biden, I believe, is going to Europe to meet with NATO. But I hear you, right? It's so hard every day to watch the indiscriminate shelling of civilians, the bombing of civilians and civilian objects, And then how does it stop, right? How does it stop? Why is it we're 30 days in and this continues? But I think that a lot of Vermonters have questions right now about, they know about UNHCR, maybe they know about the International Committee of the Red Cross and bigger organizations. Masha sharing information on artists and bookstores and Airbnbs is a huge help, but what can Vermonters do to support you and to support other Ukrainians in Vermont right now who have family and friends and communities who are in tremendous need? What are things that we can do to provide direct support? That was one of the questions that came up in the chat.
I think I can answer this one. As much as I would appreciate direct support, and as much as as I do appreciate direct support and concerns and well wishes, even donations, it was my birthday recently, about 4 days ago. And like I said, there were a lot of people who wanted to do something for my birthday, or who were asking like, hey, how can I directly support you? And I understand some concerns with Vermonters and American in general, how they're more drawn to support directly, support a person that they know, that they see, and not donating to some organization and not really knowing where their money would go. I definitely understand those concerns, but the only thing that I would ever want for my birthday is to be able to return home. Though that money that I collected personally, I send it all back home. I send it all, half of that money I donated to organization for LGBTQI military corps in Ukraine. Yes, we do have that. That's part of the reason why we're so proud, is because unlike a lot of militaries in the world, we do have queer people that have a designated corps, military corps in the military, and obviously the Russian military does not. So half of that money I donated to them for food and for clothing, for warm clothing in the winter, and then half of that money I sent back to my family, just for living costs and etc., since their credit cards are blocked and they cannot take loans or nothing. If you are interested, I don't know if Masha or Maria already sent these. If you're interested in helping displaced peoples or refugees, internally displaced peoples, Nova Ukraine deals with internally displaced peoples as well as refugees in Europe and the United States. It's if I'm not mistaken, it is a United States-based non-governmental organization. I sadly, I don't have the answer how you can directly support me financially. I feel a little uncomfortable setting up a GoFundMe page or just simply asking for money, since I understand that being here in Vermont, in the college, having friends and having the ability to work and earn money, I am more than willing to utilize every opportunity here to work and earn money. And therefore, I feel uncomfortable and uncalled for just accepting direct donations. There's just a lot of resources that I would recommend and that I personally donate to as soon as I get my paycheck. Nova Ukraine being one of those, since I have acquaintances who have escaped into Poland. The LGBTQ military, United Help Ukraine, Caritas, who's dealing with people and humanitarian aid to civilians in hotspots. Yeah, the only thing that you can do directly that would be non-financially is to make sure that you spread the word, share information. That you do not understand how grateful I am to be here and how grateful I am to have a space and have all of you hearing what I'm saying about my home country, about my family. That is amazing, realizing that there's people that support me, even non-financially, just hearing me and understanding me. That means a lot. Just creating these spaces, or like Maria and Masha went yesterday to Burlington for 2 Ukrainian supporting concerts. That means a lot. I see Ukrainian flags all over town. That means a lot. That really warms up my heart and gives me hope for the future.
Thank you, Rustic. And I want to thank Maria. I see a lot of posts in the chat for Nova Ukraine, for Caritas Ukraine, for other different organizations that Vermonters can support directly. And certainly if there's some growing opportunities to support the Ukrainian community in Vermont, and I think we'll continue to, I'll certainly continue to share those. There are a couple more questions. Kathy says, has Vermont made allowances and funding available for Ukrainians living in Vermont to work and remain here during the conflict? That is not something that I'm aware of, but certainly something as Lieutenant Governor, I'd like to explore with the governor to figure out how that would work, Kathy. Rustic or Maria, has anyone engaged with you directly about staying in Vermont, about extensions of visas or other support?
Not that I'm aware of, no. Definitely will be notified from the International Student Services in Middlebury College if it does happen so. I think there is a possibility, just not on a state level, but like on a country level, of getting temporary protection status, if I'm not mistaken. But that's the only thing that I am aware of. Not just for us as students, I'm not also can say for just non-students, Ukrainians that are living in Vermont.
Yeah, that's terrific. Maria, have you heard anything? I saw you nodding. Just wanted to give you the floor if you want to add anything.
No, I was wondering about the temporary protection status, which is available to anyone whose visas expires. For me and Rostic, we are an F1 student visa, and I'm a second year, and Rostic is a first year student. Middlebury College, we haven't received any official letters or statements from college with regards, to hosting us over the summer. We just still hope that for the summer we can go back, if the war will end, and we can come back. But other than that, we received support from our community members, from our professors, staff members who continuously offered us a place to stay if things don't go the way we hope and pray for. But no, we haven't heard anything on the state level with regards to us who, have college, who have the administration support. But on the concerts, as Rostic mentioned, I've met other Ukrainians, and I wonder what their destinies are and whether they are finding the support they all currently need.
Yeah, thank you. I think just a couple of things to clarify. So temporary protective status is something that the federal government oftentimes can offer in situations where individuals can't return to a country because of conflict. I don't know yet whether Congress is exploring temporary protective status, but we would be very happy to write a letter of support to our congressional delegation and just talking about what it would mean for students, of course, but any Vermonters who are not here as permanent residents, any Ukrainians who are not here as permanent residents and may have a visa challenge. I certainly think this is an area where, again, we could build support as a state and as a community for Ukrainians in Vermont. I'd be very happy to connect with our colleges again and just check in to see where things are at so that there's the ability for students to stay in Vermont. My goodness, that seems to be a bare minimum. So that's really important to know. Are there any other questions from our attendees today? Again, thank you for joining us. I just want to take a pause and take a moment to give the floor to you if you have questions or want to express any remarks or words of support for Rustic and Maria. And I believe Masha's left us, but for Masha as well. I see lots of thank yous and kind words in the chat. I guess what I'd like to do is conclude today's conversation. And again, thank Rustic and Maria and Masha for joining us. This conversation will be recorded. We certainly would like to share it with other groups and organizations to give more voice to your voice, to uplift your voice further. But Maria and Rustic, I guess leaving today's conversation, are there things you want Vermonters or citizens to know beyond what you've shared? Or I just want to thank you for your bravery and for your candor. There are a lot of young people around the world who are trying to understand what's happening in Ukraine and trying to understand what it means. There's a lot of high school students and college students. You're going through something that no college student or anyone should ever have to go through. And I want you to know that you have our full support. You have my full support as Lieutenant Governor, that our communities and states stand with you. But I really want to give the floor to you in our remaining 5 or 6 minutes to share any concluding remarks. And maybe Maria, will start with you, and Rustic end with you.
Yeah, I would like to thank everyone who made this discussion table possible. It means a lot to us, to Ukrainians, and it means a lot to people who are there in Ukraine, to our family members, and those people who we haven't met. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in today. Thank you so much for listening to us and trying to understand. We keep on fighting because we have all the support, because we have the support of our loved ones, but because we have the support of the free world that has been standing with us before the war broke out. We are here to provide any other resources for you to help. Please feel free to reach out to us, and we will do our best to make sure that the donations you make, they will reach out people you need. That if there is any misinformation that you encounter and you need to clarify, we are here to help with that as well. If you want to make our voices heard anywhere else, we will go wherever we can, just to make a change and to stop the war. Thank you so much, and I'm grateful for the supportive community here. And this community helps us to already do a lot, and we know that together we can do more and end this war.
Thank you, Maria. And please know my office is your office, and I will continue to give you a seat at the table, a platform, all the space you need whenever you want it. And the same, Rustic, it goes for you and your classmates as we bring this conflict to a close, and hopefully very soon. Rustic, what would you like to say? The floor is yours.
Once again, thank you, Lieutenant Governor and Andrew, for inviting us here today, giving us a space to talk, giving us a seat at the table. When I came to the state capitol, to the State House about a week and a half ago, now it's about 2 weeks ago, I felt very welcomed, and I felt like I was definitely finally doing something for my country, being so far away. I felt like I'm finally making a contribution. Thank you, Vermont, and thank you, Vermonters, for supporting us and for sharing and feeling our pain, and for hearing our voices too. I just wanted to say that I'm once again very grateful and privileged to be here, and I realize that I talk to my friends very frequently, just seeing how they're doing and what I can be doing so far away to help them. And every time I hear, well, there's very little you can do. You can, of course, donate, but then that's about it. So my options, therefore, are pretty limited. So are theirs. They can't really do anything as regular citizens. Most of my male friends who are about 18 are in the Territorial Guard. But then women and people who are disabled can't really do anything. And then it's up to our citizens of the world and governments of the world to help us put a stop to this. And I'm sure that we will put a stop to this, but it's about civilian casualties that are happening every day. Since the start of the war, there has been more civilian casualties than military casualties on the side of Ukraine. And it's very horrifying to realize that there's more civilians that died than people who are in the military. Yeah, once again, thank you so much. Please reach out for any resources or for any other information that you might want. And I myself, and I'm sure Maria and Masha will be grateful to talk about it again.
Thank you, Rustic. Thank you. Let's ask everyone joining today to give Rustic and Maria and Masha a round of applause, be it virtually or in your living rooms, wherever you are tuning in today. Thank you again for your strength and for your bravery, and keep talking. We're going to keep making space and doing everything we can as Vermonters to support you, support your families, support your communities, and support Ukraine. So thank you. Please stay in touch, and together we will do so much for Ukraine. Bye, everyone.